He owns and operates the Pack-A-Day podcast that airs 365 days a year with over 12 million views on YouTube. A new adventure begins. It's time for the Pack-A-Day radio show with Andy Herman on 1250 AM and 105.7 FM The Fan, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook and on the free Odyssey app.
Number 25 for the Pack is Keyshawn Nixon. The Commanders tested him last night. They tried to run this deep out on him right here. He's right there for all the action. He was there all night. Like, no, not on my side. They went short at him. So all he did was just put his foot in the ground, come and make a break on the ball. One after another. This is 2 weeks in a row now. He did the same thing to the Detroit Lions. They tried to double move him out here with Noah Brown. It didn't work. Little stutter and go. He didn't go for it. Right where he needs to be. Inside out, squeezing him to the sideline. Defended the pass perfectly.
Good morning, Packers Nation. Happy Wednesday. Welcome into the Pack-A-Day radio show live from the 1250 AM and 105.7 FM The Fan studios and powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. My name is Andy Herman. Thanks so much for joining us today. That was Brian Baldinger, courtesy of Brian Baldinger, on one Keyshawn Nixon, who has had a phenomenal start to the season. We're going to talk about that here in just a little bit. Also, Grant Bilse, Wisco Sports Show, going to be joining us at 8:20 a.m. today. Stick around for that. I would also love for you to join the show. You can join us on the Nicolay Law Fan Talking Text line, 414-677-1250. Again, 414-677-1250. Also get those comments in over on YouTube as well. Should have some time to go through some of those today if you want to get your questions in. Tommy, great to be chatting with you today as well, my friend. Of course, our super producer, Tommy Wartz. How are you doing, my friend?
Good morning, Andy. I'm doing all right. How you doing today, Andy?
I am doing fantastic as well. We've got so much to dig into. It still feels unbelievable that the Packers are 2-0, so early in this season with two incredible wins. And what I kind of want to start off with today is how many of these Packers players that we kind of had some hope for of hey, can they make a year two jump, or can they hang as the cornerback one, or is there any sort of sophomore slump for an Edgerrin Cooper, LVN, Devontae Wyatt? Can they finally play at a high, every one of those questions so far, for the most part, almost everyone has come up everything looks really good right now for almost every single player that you could have possibly hoped would have some sort of breakout or impressive start to the season. It's worked. And I think there's nobody maybe that's, better defines that than Keyshawn Nixon. Now, PFF grades are not everything. I think everyone will agree to that. Take it with a grain of salt, whatever you want to do. It's still noteworthy that coming in after 2 weeks in the NFL at number one in the NFL's cornerback rankings is one Keyshawn Nixon so far in the NFL with a 85.2 grade at corner, tied with Sauce Gardner. So it's just as we all predicted at the beginning of the year, Keyshawn Nixon and Sauce Gardner, your two top corners in the NFL through 2 weeks. Obviously, a lot of that is this past week where he had 5 pass breakups on 6 attempts his way and was absolutely phenomenal. It's funny, Micah Parsons, when he came to Green Bay, he's like, I've never not played with an all-pro corner. And I initially took that as well, that's kind of a weird thing to say, that you're saying that oh, this is weird, we don't have an all-pro corner on this team. And then it's no, what he is saying is that there will be all-pro corners because I am on this team, because I'm going to get pressure immediately. And corners are going to be able to play a little tighter, a little bit more aggressive, and that's going to lead to pass breakups, interceptions, and shut down defense from the corners. I'm certainly not saying in any way, shape, or form that Keyshawn Nixon's play is entirely related to one Micah Parsons, but you can bet the corners are playing a little bit better due to the pressure that the Green Bay Packers are getting up front. And I think Keyshawn Nixon is a phenomenal example of that. But this is just such a perfect example of a player that Green Bay has brought in. I think people don't realize, he had 3 years in the NFL before coming to Green Bay with the Raiders. Green Bay got him on a 1-year vet minimum $0 signing bonus signing when they picked him up. It was literally impossible to pay him any less than they did. There's no contract that existed that would have paid him any less when they brought him in. And to go from that to, hey, let's use him on special teams. The fact that he makes the team, first of all, is just a special teams gunner. He was not a returner. Remember, it was Amari Rodgers' job for whatever reason as the punt returner. He was not the kick returner. He was just a gunner on special teams. That was basically his role. a jammer on the outside for it's really funny going back and watching some of the clips and seeing Keyshawn Nixon being the jammer so that Amari Rodgers could try to return. It's like, hey, maybe just switch those two or maybe get Keyshawn Nixon back there instead. But he goes from that to an all-pro returner to a starting slot corner to now a outside corner that is playing really well. And it's just interesting. Ever since he got to the outside last year, it was like you were seeing a totally different corner. And if you look at his athletic profile is outside corner. If you usually in the slot, what you're looking for is somebody who has those really oily hips that can change direction really well, unbelievable agility, because you have all those two-way goes and players can get to any kind of spot that they want on the field. And that's not Keyshawn's game. He is a straight line guy. It's why he's a really great kick returner, is because he's got more of that straight line speed. And punt returner, you kind of need a little bit of that agility. Now, Nixon has some of that. I'm not saying he doesn't, and he's certainly been a solid punt returner as well. But he profiles as an outside corner. And all of a sudden you get him at outside corner, and he has been so much better than he's ever looked in the slot. And it is a very early sample size through 2 weeks this week. I didn't think he had a great game in week one. I had a slight negative grade on him in week one, but in week two, he was phenomenal. And overall, since they've moved him to outside corner, he has been a much improved player. And now, again, one of the key players on this defense.
I think that right now, Andy, if you're trying to look for the biggest breakout so far, it has to be Keyshawn Nixon by default right now, just by the stats and the numbers and the eye test too. He passed it all last week. He's all over the field against Washington with pretty good weapons in Washington and as well in Detroit, where, you know, Jameson Williams was a non-factor. Amon-Ra St. Brown got a couple of first downs, but as far as how bad could it have been, we've seen worse against Amon-Ra St. Brown. The defense has a bunch of candidates for breakout player, and I think it's led by Keyshawn Nixon.
And by the way, Carrington Valentine, number 7 on that list of PFF corners as well. So they've got 2 corners playing in the top 7, which is pretty freaking remarkable for where they're at right now in that secondary. And again, it's a defense that everyone is playing together. But to your point, Tommy, we can talk about a lot of guys. I mean, Evan Williams isn't a breakout because he was already really good last year, but he looks fantastic at safety alongside Xavier McKinney. Carrington Valentine and Keyshawn Nixon, you can both argue breakout players. Javon Bullard looks much better than he did last year. That's a step in the right direction. I think Quay Walker, there were those signs from Quay Walker last year, 2 or 3 games, but I think he's doing it more consistently now at middle linebacker. I think Edgerrin Cooper's taking even another jump. On defensive end, well, we know Micah obviously is Micah, but LVN, he looks so much better. Devontae Wyatt, to me, Devontae might be the one that even is if there's an argument to be made of somebody ahead of Keyshawn, Devontae Wyatt could be in that conversation. He's been phenomenal, playing not only way more snaps than he did a season ago, but now getting pressure consistently. And like all of a sudden he's just like, yeah, also I'm going to be a good run defender. Where the heck did that come from? I mean, this guy has been somebody who's been early in his career, a liability against the run. And then I would say last year, just like fine, solid, okay, but certainly not anymore. And now he's just like, no, I'm just going to hold up against the run. Colby Wooden.
Yeah.
Colby Wooden, like we were talking about him early in the offseason as a potential cut candidate. I know one person who in their final 53 had him as a cut down on their final 53 prediction. He's balling out of his mind. So this is a defense that in totality, just player after player after player is playing better than they were a season ago. And it's been really exciting to watch.
Well, and I think that kind of goes back to just the defense and how good the defense was last year. It's just so noticeably better, right? And even if that's just focusing on the defensive side too, right, Andy? Because the offensive line, we've mentioned it a few times now too. Like I thought for sure the offensive line couldn't have been better than they were last year with what they had, right? And then they bring in Banks, they bring in Tom, even with the depth pieces of Belton and Morgan moving around over the last couple of weeks, 100% you can say that maybe the offensive line is breaking out into an elite level of status as opposed to, a very good or serviceable. Like this is, other than Philadelphia, like compete that line with any other line in the NFL right now.
Yeah, certainly from a pass blocking standpoint, I think they've done a phenomenal job. I still think there's some things that they can clean up from a run blocking standpoint, but that comes with time. This is not anything abnormal. This is very normal for Green Bay throughout the start of pretty much any season, where it usually takes a little bit longer for their run game to get going. And then all of a sudden, you start seeing it click a little bit more. And the injuries to Zach Tom and Aaron Banks have not helped that either. That's something that's going to come with time. I don't have any concern about that. But no, I do think there are some players who are playing better. I think Sean Ryan's playing some really good football right now at right guard, which is really, really exciting. Tucker Kraft is taking a step. Luke Musgrave in moments has looked better. I still think there's a step for him to take. And Matthew Golden, by the way, just be on the lookout. That's all I'm going to say. That dude was open so much this past week, and it just didn't work out. The couple of balls they did throw his way were just overthrown by a little bit or underthrown by a little bit. And then he just didn't look his way in a couple other times where he was, why, if not wide open, definitely open on the play. And that just is going to come with time where he starts getting more and more opportunities in this offense. Yeah. I mean, just if you go through this roster and there are players that are taking positive steps. And to me, that was the final step of this equation for Green Bay. They went out and got the pieces that they need. I thought Aaron Banks and Nate Hobbs were what I considered like floor raisers, meaning it made it more likely that you were going to be able to get to, that there wasn't situations where you could get to like 7, 6, 8 wins, somewhere in that range, that they were going to help you kind of make sure that there was no bottoming out of this roster in any way. Then Micah Parsons, Matthew Golden, those two to me were big time ceiling raisers and had the ability to, again, help this team actually get to a championship. But you needed positive steps from the young players on this team. And so far, again, through 2 weeks, we have seen glowing reviews for the youngest team in football, making those positive steps, becoming better players. I give the coaching staff a ton of credit. I don't know what it is exactly that they did, spending time on fundamentals or technique work or whatever. But this is a team that looks not only more motivated, but has better attention to detail. Knock on wood, Tommy, but we haven't seen the drops. We haven't seen the pre-snap penalties. It's been a team with much better focus, and it just looks like it's a team that's maturing right in front of our eyes.
Well, right. And I think that the two biggest example, like Lucas Van Ness is the guy, right, that as far as maturing goes, like his game is growing immensely in these last 2 weeks already. He's getting pressures, and he's just showing off his athleticism a whole lot more. It feels like we knew that the reason why he went so high was of how well he tested and his athleticism and flexibility, versatility with Iowa in college. And now getting to the NFL, he felt very one-dimensional, and we didn't see him out there in his first 2 years on other than pass rush downs. And now he's out there on obvious run situations, and he can be a rotational pass rusher. Like, as far as maturing, like, his game has grown way more in one off season than I think even Keyshawn Nixon's, who might be having a better season. But if we're looking for the most matured, like, versus breakout, like, Lucas Van Ness has matured more as an NFL player than anyone on this defense, I think.
And I think this is where, new defensive line coach Jamarcus Covington gets a lot of credit as well. Make no mistake, the number one reason I think this defensive line is playing better is because of the acquisition of Micah Parsons. I bet Jason Rebrovich would have loved having Micah Parsons on his defensive line as well while he was coaching these guys. Probably would have made his job a heck of a lot easier. But what I always look at, it's really tough to tell assistant coaches, right? We're not there in the meeting rooms. We're not there at practice every day to be able to tell what's getting said to these players to make them better. We're not there in the film sessions. There's no all 22 of what's going on with the coaches on a day-to-day basis. It's tough to tell, right? So to me, I always just look at, all right, where are my expectations for players ahead of the season, and how many players exceeded those expectations, met those expectations, or came far below expectations? And you look at that defensive line right now, and Colby Wooden, far exceeding expectations. Devontae Wyatt, exceeding expectations. Carl Brooks, I would say meeting expectations so far. Nasir Stackhouse, exceeding my expectations just by making this team and being a viable rotational player on this defensive line right now. Defensive end, Micah Parsons, already exceeding my expectations. Rashawn Gary, I would say meeting, maybe slightly exceeding, but probably meeting my expectations. LVN, exceeding expectations. Baron Sorrell was really impressive. It's too early to say one way or the other, but really impressive in a very small sample size this past game. I would say Enagbari is meeting expectations. I mean, there is nobody to me on that defensive line who is at minimum not meeting expectations. And there are multiple that are either exceeding or far exceeding expectations. To me, yes, Micah Parsons, a huge reason why, but tip of the cap to new defensive line coach DeMarcus Covington as well.
What about if you were to break it into positional groups, Andy? Do you think that the most expectations exceeded goes to the Green Bay Packers defensive line? Because that feels like, well, if Micah Parsons wasn't a part of this unit and wasn't a part of this, he is meeting his expectations, and it's just elevating everyone else on that defensive line. Do you still think you would go with the defensive line as that unit for Green Bay this season so far?
Yeah, I think it would have to be their defensive line or the cornerback group, kind of including Javon Bullard in that slot position. To me, Nixon is exceeded, Valentine's exceeded, and Javon Bullard is either met or exceeded my expectations as that trio as well. And in minimal snaps this past week, I thought Nate Hobbs met expectations as well. So the corners, I would say, are in that conversation. The defensive line, there's a lot. The safeties and linebackers are really impressive too, which is kind of what I expected out of those two groups. And I don't think there's a group on offense yet that has been like far exceeding my expectations. So to me, that debate would come down to defensive line and corner. And if you wanted to make an argument for either one, I wouldn't have an issue with it.
Yeah, I just think that Hafley's just as good as gone to me now, Andy. I can't even imagine a scenario in which he's the Packers defensive coordinator next year. Would it be something that you could see like a Covington being elevated in that role, or Green Bay going out of the system to bring someone in?
Well, Jeff Hafley yesterday had cereal, and then he left the milk and like the little cereal residue in the bowl. Didn't even wash it out, much less put it in the dishwasher.
He leaves the toilet seat up too.
That's
another one. I've heard that.
Time.
Yeah.
There's some real sketchy things that we're starting to find out about Jeff Hafley that I'm thinking are probably going to make him not defensive coordinator material. But we're monitoring all of that. But I'm sorry, as I was trying to make a joke, I completely forgot your question in totality.
I'm just saying, DeMarcus Covington, like if he really stands out this year, like is it a move for Green Bay to keep him in the organization and elevate him, or is it like an out of organization hire?
So I think, first of all, if there is a inter-team hire for defensive coordinator, I think DeMarcus Covington goes to pretty much the top of that list. But to me, this is a far too important decision to just be like, yep, we're just going to automatically promote somebody from within. If Jeff Hafley does in fact become a defensive coordinator, a head coach somewhere else, to me, you have to open this up to make sure that you are getting the right person in that position to fill his very large shoes where he has done such an unbelievable job so far. Now, one thing that complicates this a little bit, and sometimes when a new coach goes somewhere else, they will specifically try not to raid the team that they were just coming from because they just don't want to do that to the team. But Jeff Hafley might like DeMarcus Covington as his defensive coordinator as well if he comes a coach somewhere else. So if you drag your feet on it, if you're Green Bay and are like, we're going to open this up to a 20-person, defensive coordinator, interview fest, you might lose one or two of those guys to either Jeff Hafley or to other defensive coordinator openings somewhere else in the NFL. So I think those are going to be things that you have to kind of keep an eye on. But I will say, if it's me, I'm still taking my time. I mean, the last time they did this, they did 18, 20 defensive coordinator candidates. And by doing so, they landed on Jeff Hafley. So if it takes that again, if it takes the time needed to figure out who that next great coordinator is going to be, rather than just from, promoting from within, I would probably do it that way. But if they have that unbelievable feel that Covington has been incredible, that he can basically just take what Jeff Hafley is doing and pick up where he is leaving off, and there's no question about it, then what are you doing? Just make him defensive coordinator the very next day and don't even mess around with it.
No, I completely agree. And I just think that if we're talking about breakout coaching candidates like Jeff Hafley and DeMarcus Covington getting, elevated and promoted through their business, also needs to be talked about as well.
Totally agree. And I mean, that's the beautiful thing right now. Enjoy it right now, because of course there's going to be adversity that hits at some point, and the conversation will be everyone should be fired and everyone should be cut and this team can't win it all. And, we're certainly in a glorious honeymoon phase with the addition of Micah Parsons and 2 early season wins. There will be adversity, of course, through the course of the season. I don't see it coming this week with the Cleveland Browns on the schedule. I hope I'm right about that. I don't need a nervous game in Cleveland in week 3 after coming off of 2 amazing wins in a mini bye. I want to see this team just come out and, quite frankly, just win this game easily, not even have it be a game in the fourth quarter. That I think is almost the expectation for this game. That's always tough. I mean, NFL teams are really good. Even the bad ones are really good and have ways to make you pay if you're not having your A game. And whether it's just Myles Garrett wrecking shop or, Joe Flacco on some of those crazy, it's like Joe Flacco is one of those quarterbacks that just for no reason can get hot and just all of a sudden start hitting receivers. And while it doesn't seem like that's something that's super likely against this Packers defense, you just never know in the NFL. But like I said, there will be that adversity throughout the course of the year. Don't see it this year, but or this week, I should say. But it's going to be interesting to see when that does hit, how this team responds. But a lot of season left, but the signs through 2 weeks have been massively, massively encouraging so far. We've got a lot more to get to. Grant Bilse of the Wisco Sports Show is going to be joining us here momentarily. Of course, Football Talk on the Fan is presented by Paramount Plus. You can't count on much these days, but you can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. Watch your local NFL game live every Sunday on CBS and Paramount Plus all season long. Visit ParamountPlus.com/NFL to get started today. We are 63 and sunny in Milwaukee, high of 79, low of 62. We'll be right back with Grant Bilse. This is the Pack a Day Radio Show powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Welcome back to the Pack a Day Radio Show. We are live from the 1250 AM and 105.7 FM The Fan Studios, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Reminder, the Mason Crosby Show is coming up next from 9 to 11 right here on The Fan. And joining us right now on the Fan Guest Hotline, powered by Gruber Law, is the amazingly wonderful Grant Bilse, Wisco Sports Show. You can find him on social media at Wisco Grant. Grant, how the heck are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing excellent, Andy. You're too kind. I would recommend for those who aren't Packers fans or for those who are outsiders, I would recommend the 2 weeks that we've had. I'd recommend that your favorite team acquire the best defensive player in football and then blow doors on a Monday and a Thursday. And then after that Thursday night game, we just get to sit back and watch the Bears look bad and the Vikings look bad. Like, I don't know how the first 2 weeks of the NFL season could go much better for us so far.
It's like one of those medication commercials where it's like, have you tried winning your first 2 games of the regular season? Side effects may include over happiness. And, we won't say the other one that it might include, but it's one of those like medication. I would, if you are struggling with depression, anxiety, frustration in life, just win your first 2 games and everything will go, or trade for Micah Parsons and things will go very well for you moving forward. Have you tried it? It really works great.
I don't know why everyone else is struggling so hard with it. I see people talking about these other teams. What are we going to do with this quarterback? I don't know. I guess but the Packers fans just haven't had to endure many of these problems or these concerns so far. So I'm doing excellent, Andy. How are you?
I'm great. I have a Chicago Bears fan who is by far and away having an existential crisis, who is a friend of mine. And he's just like, we had a long talk the other day, and basically the crux of the conversation is like, over like 30 years now, we have had 2 entirely different NFL experiences. He's like, you wake up every single Sunday getting to enjoy football, basically like at least competing every week. Maybe there's going to be some disappointments, but you get to watch Brett Favre, you get to watch Aaron Rodgers, now Jordan Love, you get to watch Charles Woodson, Reggie White, Micah Parsons. He's like, every once in a while, like we'll have a season that's like, oh, this is kind of fun. Like this, we're actually competing this year. And then that ends in like a, Caleb Haney interception to BJ Raji, to you, of course, to the Green Bay Packers, of course, or, we lose in the Super Bowl to Peyton Manning and the Colts. And he's like, you just don't understand. Like your team is falling apart by week 2 every single year. He's like, you can't enjoy, Bills Ravens when your team after week 1, after an off season of excitement, is like, here's your everything is in your, like Caleb Williams is going to be the guy. Ben Johnson's the next great head coach. And then you immediately blow it to JJ McCarthy in the 4th quarter. It's like, I can't enjoy football after that. And then like the same thing in week 2, you get blown out by 50 some points. It's like, what am I supposed to do? And it's just like, there have been 2 very different existences for Packers fans and Bears fans.
Well, it's funny. Last week, so week 1 is probably the better example of this after they beat the Lions, but a good gauge of how well your team is doing and the place that your fan base is in is if you sit up straight and maybe even give a couple of extra volume notches to the Toyota halftime show on Sunday Night Football. If you're like, oh yeah, I want to see this actually. Yep, I'm going to turn this up. Like, that's how you know things are going well for your team, instead of I'm going to go to the bathroom, I'm going to go get some food. Oh, no. We're going to watch the Toyota halftime show, and we might actually even turn it up a little bit louder. That's how you know that things are going well for your team. And that's been the case for the Packers through 2 games at least. And, we can talk about what comes next or, whether or not they're going to get out over their skis. But through 2 weeks, it's been pretty perfect.
The halftime show, turning over to NFL Network for the highlights after Sunday Night Football is done, in the morning, maybe Good Morning Football or one of these shows is a little bit turned up as well. So or you're just, tuning into the Pack-A-Day podcast a little bit more, the Wisco Sports Show a little bit more as well. Like those are always good things to do as well. But no, it's a very good time to be a Packers fan. Grant, and these, I always just like to ask first and give you kind of the floor. What have been your takeaways of this 2-0 start? You can go in any direction that you want, but what's kind of just, marinating in your mind right now?
Well, I think it's the defense, not because the offense has been horrible. I think the offense has room to grow. We had a guest from Sumer Sports on our show yesterday, on our midday show, who talked about the Packers offense. And really the one place that they've gotten hung up is in some of those complex run schemes that Matt LaFleur loves. And 2 replacement offensive linemen and probably defenses that have keyed on the run game has probably played a big role in that, right? Other than that, on offense, they've been pretty terrific. They've held up in pass protection. Really, it's just been that inability to get the running game going. So the offense has been bad. But I think I'm thinking most about the defense. And Andy, I was thinking about this morning before hopping on with you. How many times have we come into a Packers season? You probably understand this better than anybody. We come into a year and you're like, man, if Colby Wooden can just take a little step, or if Lucas Van Ness can just do a little, or if Devontae Wyatt can put it together, right? There are these 5, 6, half dozen players every year where you're hoping that they do something, but deep down, that like you're going to get to week 3 and realize, that's not it. But like Andy, you watch Packers highlights and I'm hearing Devontae Wyatt, and I'm like, they're all doing the thing. And I think it's because those players have like, I think Devontae Wyatt's good. I think Wooden's good. And I think Van Ness, even though he hasn't been like this, this burgeoning star as a top 15 pick, is good. I think those players have worked and improved, but you add Micah Parsons into the mix and it just changes everything. So it's been an absolute blast to watch Micah Parsons, and it still doesn't feel real. But I think what strikes me most is the effect that he's having on other players. And we're seeing all these young kind of secondary players pop in a way that you always hope to see, but let's be real, you never really do. This year is different, and that's been really fun.
I think just in a 2-year period of time, when you add Micah Parsons to the defensive line, and he can be the one that's great, everyone else along that line can be good, and it feels good because you already have your guy. That's amazing. At linebacker, when you add Edgerrin Cooper and he can be great, all of a sudden Quay Walker being good feels good. Like, you don't need him to be great. It looks great that he's doing well. And when you add Xavier McKinney to the secondary, it doesn't matter maybe that some of the other guys aren't great. He's great. You have a great safety. You have a great player in that secondary. So it doesn't maybe matter that nobody else is great because you already have that great guy in the secondary. So when you add 3, to me, all pro or, caliber players at each level, defensive line, linebacker, safety, now all of a sudden it just lifts everything else up around them. And I do feel like all 3 of those players are really not just great themselves, but they do lift the play of everyone around them as well. And I just think we're seeing that. And again, credit to the coaches, credit to the individual players like Wyatt, Van Ness, Evan Williams, etc., Javon Bullard, Keyshawn Nixon. But when you do add those players, it just, I think, lessens the expectation a little bit. It kind of gives you a different lens to view them through. And it just gives them a lot of easier matchups and just better situations because you have 3 great players on all 3 levels of the defense. I think we're seeing these huge acquisitions by Brian Gutekunst really, really pay off.
And I think all those players on defense were good. Like, I think they had a lot of good players on defense. It's not like some people reacted, mostly outside of Packers fandom, but some people, reacted when Micah Parsons was acquired. It's like, that's a lot to give up for one guy. It would be, and it still is. The contract is huge, but a player that age at his level should be worth it in theory. We'll see. Only time will tell. But some folks acted like, Micah Parsons was expected to come in and save this defense. And that's not really the case. He's brought in to be kind of the cherry on top. They have so many good players. Like, I love Evan Williams. And I really, really like Javon Bullard, who I thought had maybe his best game as a pro against the Commanders. And I like Wyatt and Wooden, and I like Van Ness enough. It's just those guys by themselves wasn't going to be enough. So you add Parsons into that mix. It's like the base, the foundation was already built. It's like adding, the analogy I kept using on my show, it's like adding one huge bat into the middle of a lineup that was already good, but the lineup maybe as it stood before wasn't good enough. Well, now everybody sees better pitches. Everybody has a little pressure taken off of them. And I liked the rest of the lineup. They had a lot of good or very good players. I don't know that they had enough great, and Micah Parsons is certainly that.
We had a similar analogy. I said they added the CC Sabathia to their rotation, and now your 1 becomes the 2, the 2, the 3, the 3, the 4, etc. Now everything kind of clicks into place. It's kind of the same exact thing. But yeah, here's the big, I think, litmus test, at least for me. I'll let you speak on this as well, as we're being joined by Grant Bilse, Wisco Sports Show. Find him on social media at Wisco Grant. When Micah's out of the game, I'm not like, oh God, all right, Micah's out of the game. Yeah. Like, buckle up. How is the defense going to survive? It feels a lot cooler and better, and like more big plays kind of seem to happen when Mike is in the game. But the defense has been really good when Micah hasn't been in the game, which has been a sizable amount over the first 2 games combined. And it feels different. I'm not going to say it doesn't feel totally different, or like a little bit different, but I still have a ton of faith in the 11 that are out there, even when it's Carl Brooks or Kingsley Enagbare or Baron Sorrell or who's ever rotating in. I just feel like, yep, they got this. I'm not concerned about it at all.
Yeah, and I think that's Jeff Hafley in year 2. That's a part of it as well, or that's the way I read it. You might read it differently, but I remember it might have even been in his introductory press conference. I don't know. Like, you're the same way. You watch all of these press conferences, and all these comments are stuck in your brain somewhere. I don't know exactly when these comments all were made, but I remember Jeff Hafley early on basically being like, my goal for the defense is to get to a point where we're so comfortable and we're so confident in what we're doing that my guys don't have to think. And then they can play even faster and they can hit even harder. And as he said recently, this is an extension, I think, of that original philosophy. Like, guys aren't afraid to make mistakes. They don't slow down, or they don't pull up to avoid missing a tackle because they know there's 2 or 3 teammates behind them ready to pick them up if they don't make a play. And I remember Jeff Hafley very early on in Green Bay kind of preaching that. And it seems like it's now to begin year 2 come full circle. It seems like these guys are very comfortable in his scheme. They're playing faster. They're playing harder. And that's not just Micah Parsons. He's been, again, a nice cherry. He's been a nice final piece to add into that and add at a very high level. But I think Rashawn Gary and Lucas Van Ness and Wooden and Wyatt, who has always kind of flashed when he's been healthy and gotten opportunities, Cooper in year 2, like these guys are so comfortable and so confident in the scheme, which was Hafley's goal all along. They're just flying around at a different pace and hitting at a different level than we've seen from a Packers defense in recent memory. I don't know where this would, compare to the best Packers defenses of the last 10 or 20 years, but it's certainly the most impressive to the eye of the last few seasons for sure.
If I were to take the best 2 weeks of any defense over the last, 20, 30 years, this is as impressive, if not more impressive, of a 2-week stretch. Is a small sample size, etc. But it's as good as I've seen a Packers team play defense. Maybe again in my time, that Fritz Shermer, Reggie White defense was pretty dang impressive. Leroy Butler, etc. That probably gets there. There were moments certainly in the Dom Capers, Charles Woodson, Clay Matthews that felt like this as well. But we're talking about, again, 2 Super Bowl caliber defenses in 2010 and 96. This, to me, through 2 weeks, very small sample size, has felt at minimum on par with that level of defense, which is, of course, I think why so many people are really excited about this team moving forward. I got a couple fun ones for you, Grant, as we're being joined again by Grant Bilse, Wisco Sports Show. You can find him on social media at Wisco Grant. All right, first one, which Packer has impressed you the most through 2 weeks so far?
Ooh. I suppose it could be any. Would it be weird? Would it be a reach? Would I be overthinking this answer to just say Devontae Wyatt? He looks explosive and he looks fast, and there's something about, again, it's just the eye test watching on television. He's had opportunities to wreck plays up the middle, and he's done it. And the Packers picked up his 5th-year option. They did not pick up Quay Walker's, right? I'm remembering that correctly. We talked about this on my show last night, so I hope I had it correct. Otherwise, I was misleading folks for like an hour. I've been really impressed with him. And, there's other players who have played really well, but I've watched him and said, oh, yeah, there's that first-round pick from that elite Georgia defense that's finally giving them that explosive push up the middle to collapse pockets. So I guess I would say Devontae Wyatt.
I'm right there with you. We talked about in the first segment that the players who have taken a leap and a big step in the right direction. And the 2 that we talked about the most were Keyshawn Nixon and Devontae Wyatt, really being the 2 that have really stepped up in a significant way. I think the argument is right there for Devontae Wyatt. On the flip side, though, who's been a Packer that's disappointed you the most through 2 weeks?
Well,
it's a tough one.
It is really tough. I guess maybe, I don't know, maybe Matthew Golden, but that's not his fault. Like, I've been disappointed through 2 weeks with the experience of Matthew Golden because he was hyped up so much in training camp. And I guess it's probably, Andy, like a good thing they don't feel like they need to spam him the ball. It's probably a good thing that you get a couple targets a game, man. You're a rookie. This is an offense that's well-established, a team that's well-established. So it's actually probably a good thing that Matthew Golden isn't getting spammed, 6-7 targets a game, which for this offense would be a pile of, it'd be a mountain of targets the way they operate and steep they are. I've been experienced with the Matthew Golden, or I've been disappointed with the Matthew Golden experience, but I don't think that's on him, and I don't think it's a bad thing.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering if that was the direction you were going to go in. And it's interesting. You watch him on tape, especially this past week, and he's getting open all the time. And it's just like, this is just a matter of time. He was this close if they just hit a couple of those passes to having like 2 catches for 134 yards and 2 touchdowns. And we're talking like the whole world is abuzz with Matthew Golden right now if those balls are just thrown a little bit better to him. So, yeah, this is just a matter of when, not if. There will be some really massive Matthew Golden games, and I think it's just a matter of time, and I think we might see that sooner rather than later. But to that point, one of the questions I even had to ask you is how you put your Matt LaFleur hat on for a moment. How would you like to see them get Matthew Golden going a little bit more in this offense?
Well, Jaden Reed's injury is certainly going to open up some more opportunities. Although what's weird is when Jaden Reed went down, whose usage, well, let me back up. Matthew Golden was already thought of as a starter in certain personnel groups. Like, he was already one of the frontline guys. So it's not a matter of him getting on the field. It's more a matter of him getting targets. When Jaden Reed got hurt, what we saw a little bit on Thursday and what I might come to expect a little moving forward is actually some more work for Savion Williams, because he can do some of that sweep stuff, involving wide receivers in the running game. We saw that on, I think, their most important drive of that Commanders game was a run that featured a sweep play to both Golden and Williams. So how do you get Matthew Golden going? I would not do it in the way that they tried to with Christian Watson or Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I wouldn't just throw deep bombs to him until one of them connects. I don't find that to be an efficient way, even if he's fast, and he is, and he should project to be a very good deep threat. I like to start a little simpler. Just get the ball in his hands and let him go. Slants, crossing patterns, go steal something from Ben Johnson's film from one of these games to get Matthew Golden moving sideways with the ball in a ton of space. I would not just start uncorking deep balls once a quarter to him, because those are not efficient. And I think when those aren't connecting, and they're hard to connect, it takes a long time to build that deep ball chemistry, then the player starts to press and the quarterback starts to press. And I don't want that for Matthew Golden and Jordan Love. So I'd start simpler, but there should be opportunities now, especially with Jaden Reed's injury.
Jaden Reed's slot snaps went from 5 in week 1 to 16 in week 2. So we did see a little bit of an uptick. And certainly I'm sure that the Jaden Reed injury played a pretty big piece of that. So we'll see how they utilize those receivers in week 3. I would expect this is going to be a lot of Dobbs, Wicks, and Golden, with some Savion Williams and Malik Heath kind of scattered in as well. But there should be a ton of opportunity for Matthew Golden here, especially with Jaden Reed's absence coming up in the near future. A couple last things with Grant Bilse, Wisco Sports Show. Find him on social media at Wisco Grant. Packers, Browns, what are you looking for in this one?
Domination, selfishly, right? Like, can we get it 3 times in 3 games coming off a mini bye? I guess I would love to see Tom and Banks back out there. Like, that would be... Put the game aside, I would love to see their full complement of starting offensive linemen, especially because the 2 who have been absent are the 2 that they paid money to this offseason. Those are 2 of their more important linemen. I would like to see the full complement, and I'd like to see them run the ball, because I know they're capable and I know those concepts work. But again, I'll go back to, we had a guest on from Sumer Sports, Sam Brookhouse, who's really good, and they grade all the plays and they break it down, second by second with their modeling. And they've said really the one thing on this Packers offense that hasn't worked, and I think it's been in part due to those absences on the O-line, is those complex running schemes from Matt LaFleur that feature pre-snap motion and misdirection. And I think that's because Banks and Tom haven't been out there. So what I would love to see, go into Cleveland and just run the cover off the ball and execute those blocks and those schemes at a really, really high level. And yeah, I'd love to see Jordan Love, connect with Matthew Golden and all that stuff. But the running game has kind of been the one part that's been missing. So to go into Cleveland with extra rest and execute that really crisp and clean at a high level, I think that would bring me the most satisfaction on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm right there too. I want to see this run game get going. To me, it's like, it's maybe not like the final piece of the equation, but if you get that run game going at a higher level, which we know Josh Jacobs is, it's not like you're going to hold him to 80 yards every single game. He's going to get going at some point. And when that happens, it just feels like, what more do you need? The running game's going. Jordan Love's playing great. The defense is playing amazing. It feels like everything clicks into place. And when you go into a game like the Browns, where like kind of your main things are like, don't turn the ball over and don't let Myles Garrett wreck shop. Well, if you can run the football successfully, it kind of takes care of 2 of those things in one fell swoop. Absolutely.
Yeah. And of course, all of the things that we've been seeing, I want to see that continue as well. I would love to see Jordan Love and Matthew Golden have a nice couple little moments. But I think it starts with running the ball. That's their means of controlling this game and neutralizing the biggest threat the Browns can offer in Myles Garrett. You're absolutely right.
I feel like this is a game where we could potentially see the defense, who has been dominating through 2 weeks, maybe start to get a few more of those turnovers as well, maybe punching a couple of those balls out, getting a couple picks on Flacco, etc. Sure. That would certainly make things easier for the offense as well. All right, Grant, prediction, Packers, Browns, who do you got?
Is the line, what is it, like 10.5, 11.5? I haven't looked. That's what it was for the
It was
Ravens
like 8.5 initially. It was 7.5 that moved to 8.5. Let me get it for you right now per the Potawatomi Sportsbook. It is currently back down to 7.5, believe it or not.
Interesting. So I guess that's a huge compliment to the Ravens and their ability to bounce back after losses and to take care of underdogs even on the road. So I'll take the Packers. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little bit more close than Packers fans would like. That's the nature of the NFL. But I would take the Packers to win in this game, and I would say like 28-14, 28-13, something like that. That would make me very happy. If they're able to run the ball efficiently and cruise to a win like that, I would take that. And then you get ready to go to Dallas at 3-0, a place that you're comfortable going to play, and it's Micah Parsons' return, and it's another great game and another great story. So that would be my prediction, although certainly don't listen to me, but that's the shape that I see.
7.5 feels a little bit low to me, but it is the second greatest spread of the week. The best is Bills minus 11.5 against the Dolphins on Thursday Night Football. They are tied with the Seattle Seahawks, who are 7.5 point favorites against the New Orleans Saints in that particular game. So
It's not college
They're
football.
not
7.5 is a big spread. My frame of reference was the Ravens, and I don't know where it closed last week, but it was like 11 or 10.5.
It was, I think it was even higher than that. Yeah, it was pretty high. I'm honestly surprised it's not a little bit higher. And when it got to like 8.5, I was like, I bet it's 8.5, and it moves to 9. And I'm like, that kind of feels right. 7.5 seems a little bit, I don't know, just sketchy. I don't like it. I don't like it, Grant. I would like it to just be like the Vegas feels like it's like a 14-point difference, but we'll see. It is one of those games where it's the first road game. I'm interested to see if Green Bay can carry that same energy they had in 2 huge home games in those first ones, and a random Sunday noon road game against the Browns. It's a little bit different to kind of get up for that than it is at a home game prime time against a big time team. So we'll see how they kind of deal with that as well. Grant, I cannot thank you enough. Tell us where we can find all of your incredible work.
Oh, the Wisco Sports Show, 4 to 6 in the evenings. I would just follow my Twitter if you're on there at Wisco Grant, because the show streams live and all the links are there. Otherwise, if you look up the Wisco Sports Show, Facebook, YouTube, there's a page, there's an account. Just like it or subscribe to one of those, and you'll be able to watch and listen. Otherwise, radio markets in Madison, Eau Claire, La Crosse, Central Western Wisconsin. But again, if you just go to my Twitter, it's all right there. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Appreciate you a ton, my friend. We'll catch up on the podcast soon, and you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, Andy. Go Pack, go.
Go Pack, go. That is Wisco Grant Bilse joining us on the Fan Guest Hotline, powered by Gruber Law. One call, that's all. Make sure to follow him again on social media at Wisco Grant. This is the Pack a Day Radio Show. Our last segment coming up right after this. Welcome back to the Pack a Day Radio Show. My name is Andy Herman. Thanks so much for joining us here today. A reminder that the Mason Crosby Show is coming up next from 9 to 11. A huge thank you to Grant Bilse for joining us this past segment. Again, make sure to follow him on social media at Wisco Grant. We've got a couple other things to get to today. I want to start off actually with Matthew Golden and kind of talking about his target share, because I know that there's been maybe a little bit of maybe underwhelming, thoughts just with what Matthew Golden's done so far. We obviously talked about it with Grant there for just a little bit, but I want to reiterate to people. Dusty Evely put out a great article over, I believe it was on Acme Packing Company on this as well, but there was a real impressive performance from Matthew Golden that was kind of just hiding in plain sight this past week. And there were routes for Matthew Golden that were incredibly crisp, that were able to get him open throughout the entirety of the day. I mean, he was open on the deep shot from like 90. He was open on the deep shot on 4th down that should have been a touchdown. A couple of misses from Jordan. No two other ways around it. Like, Jordan's got to hit those, and you'd like to see him hit a few more of those. That's one of the things I think Green Bay's offense can improve upon a little bit right now. But this was not a Matthew Golden issue. He is right on the precipice of becoming a big time receiver, in my opinion, based on what I'm seeing on tape. And sometimes with, young wide receivers, it just takes a little bit longer for a quarterback, an established quarterback, to start looking at the younger players a little bit more. You have all the reps and all the experience throwing to Romeo Dobbs and to Dontavian Wicks, Jaden Reed, Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave. You have all those built-in reps over years of working with those players. Then you get a new rookie that comes in, and it's just a little bit more unfamiliar. It just takes a little bit more time. This isn't like I can promise you unequivocally, Jordan is not being like, sorry, Rook, you're going to have to earn it, or I'm not going to look your way into. It's nothing to do with that. It's just as you kind of go through your progressions, there's certain things you start feeling a little bit more comfortable with. And it's the guys that you've kind of, worked with in the past and know exactly where they're going to be. As Jordan gets on that same page with Matthew Golden, remember, Jordan missed some time in camp with that left hand injury. Yeah, I think there's no question about it that Golden's going to become one of the most important players on this offense. And so, yeah, I know it's been a little bit underwhelming from a statistical standpoint. If you have Matthew Golden in fantasy, you're probably not too happy right now. I don't know what that ultimate box score is going to look like once he starts getting a little bit more involved and the throws start coming his way. I still think there's a ton of mouths to feed in this offense, but just rest assured what Matthew Golden is doing out there right now as a route runner and as a separator has been massively impressive. And again, it's just a matter of time before he really starts to make a big time impact on this offense. All right, with that, let's get to our Potawatomi Sportsbook final thought of the day.
You got to do some smart thinking.
It's time for Andy Herman's final thought of the day.
What are you thinking?
Powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook.
What the hell were you thinking?
You're listening to the Pack a Day Radio Show on 1250 AM and 105.7 FM, The Fan.
All right, so I realize we are 2 weeks in. I realize it is a small sample size. I realize that the Packers have not won a playoff game yet this year. I realize that they are not on their way to the Super Bowl. We're not celebrating an NFC championship victory today. But there have been 2 impressive wins, and this team looks really, really great through 2 weeks so far. And I just want to reiterate, this is now another point in the direction of all of the conversation, all of the talk, all of any oxygen that it took place whatsoever of Brian Gutekunst or Matt LaFleur being on the hot seat going into the season was just such hot garbage. Like, these 2 are incredibly good. And what you have to realize from a Matt LaFleur standpoint, right? You have to be so careful with who are you going to bring in next? You know who looked amazing? Mike McDaniels. Mike McDaniel had everyone wanting to be like, that's the next great head coach. He is going to tear it up. He's going to be absolutely amazing and astonishing. Like, he's going to be the guy that changes this league. He probably doesn't make it through this season. He's probably going to be an assistant on Matt LaFleur's staff once he gets fired, similar to Robert Saleh last year. He is flamed out incredibly fast. Right. Even Kyle Shanahan, now they're 2-0 this year, but Kyle Shanahan, by the end of last year, there was real whispers of do they need to move on from Kyle Shanahan? You look throughout this league, look at Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson's going to be the next new hotshot head coach. All right. Well, he's off to an 0-2 start with Chicago, and things could start to spiral pretty quick already in year 1 if they don't turn this around relatively fast. They've got a big game coming up with Dallas this week. It is very, very difficult to win in this league. And when you find a head coach that can win consistently and get you in the playoffs pretty much every single year, the value in that is immeasurable. And same thing with a general manager. Like, this is a general manager that came around when this team was starting to really decline at the end of the Aaron Rodgers era. And he came in and he immediately, basically reset this roster, going out and getting guys like Preston Smith, Adrian Amos, Zadarius Smith, and built this roster right back up and had them competing in an NFC championship game and put together, I think, a Super Bowl contending team. Just didn't work out that way. And then, completely both of these, Goody and Matt took this team from the Aaron Rodgers era into the Jordan Love era without basically missing a beat whatsoever. They have been so impressive in their tenures in Green Bay. I understand that at the end of the day, this is about winning playoff games and winning Super Bowls. And if they want to shut everyone up, all they have to do is go out and have that success in the postseason, and it takes care of itself. But any of the talk of it was beyond ridiculous. And I hope people are seeing, even through this 2-0 start, of just how ridiculous the conversations with Matt and Goody were. These are two at the top of their individual positions. Both of them, if fired, would have jobs lined up the next day if they wanted it. Green Bay is very lucky and in very good hands with Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur at this moment. All right, that's going to do it for us today on the Pack a Day Radio Show. A huge thank you to Tommy. Make sure to check him out later, of course, on the leadoff show covering all things Milwaukee Brewers. Stay tuned for the Mason Crosby Show coming up next from 9 to 11 right here on The Fan. Find the Pack a Day podcast 365 days a year, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Back tomorrow with Jake Burns to break down Packers Browns from a Browns perspective. This has been the Pack a Day Radio Show. Enjoy your Wednesday. And of course, as always, go Pack Go.